And in this episode, I've got a yellow glow from the light there. And in this episode, we're looking at the axle strip down, checking the differential, removing the boge self-leveling strut and all its associated knacker ball joints, enjoying some more of the beautiful North Devon weather. It really is marvellous. Anyway, I hope you enjoy. Feedback, like, subscribe, unlike, do what you like. But yeah, feel free to comment and enjoy the video. Thanks for watching. Right, got the hubs and everything all cleaned up. A couple of observations. There's always a couple of observations. Both these damper holes are elongated. That one, this one's worse. I'm just going to cut the or flat those welds down and weld a tight ring back on there. That's not a problem. Hubs have both come up nicely. No problems at all with either of the hubs. The stub axles, however, are royally ruined. So this face down here is what the seal on the back of the hub or mates against. The wheel bearing, one goes there, and there's a seal above it. So first and foremost, you can see there's a degree of wear, not a huge amount of wear, but when you run a pen up the edge there, you can feel a definite ridge. There is a definite ridge between the wearing face and the rest of the bearing, which is odd, because the inner race of the bearing shouldn't move. The other thing that I've observed on this one particularly is this bearing, this seal face, if you run the pen tip across that, I mean, it's like running it across a 78 record. For you kids who don't know, ask your grandpa, or ask your dad even. 78 record that is. So that stub axle is beyond its usable life. This one is not so bad, but still, I'm picking up less of a ridge there, but more of a ridge here on the outer one. And here, there is just the faintest amount of movement. So that one definitely needs replacing. That one could probably last, but it's going to end up chewing up its seal. Now you can well. But the rest of the axle seems fine. I've got to take the prop shaft flange needs to come off because the seal is weepy underneath. You can see there's oil around here. That seal's gone as well. So I'll take that fella off. I may need to take the gasket off, so the diff may end up coming out of this. Not a huge issue, to be honest. Give me a chance to just check the teeth on it as well, because I've got a feeling this gasket under here has gone in this area here. It's not uncommon for gaskets to blow when breathers are completely and utterly bunged up. It's not going to come as a huge surprise, is it? It's got some epic ridges on it. This is the flange from the front of the diff. I don't think that's any good. The other thing I've noticed on this, that's had some torque going through it, hasn't it? Right, marvellous people. The A-frame is off. The self-leveling strut is off. What a bastard of a job that is. So basically, 4 bolts hold it onto the chassis. 2 bottom ones you can get a socket onto. 2 top ones just about get a socket in there. Sorry, just about get a spanner in there. I'm going to show you. Now you can bloody see it. So what we've got up here is the bracket that the levelling strut bolts onto. You can see the top 2 threads are right up. They're at a 45-degree angle to the floor. There's the bracket for the A-frame, and then the axle should go under here, pretty much under where the exhaust is at the moment. Swing free. These bastards. Nut goes on the inside, just enough room to get a flat of a spanner on it. Now, I'm warning you now, if you have not got a windy gun, get my windy gun. Like that. 1/2-inch drive. This one is max torque 680 Newton meters. That's got some grunt. That struggled. That struggled with a full 200 psi bloody tank, and it was turning them at about 1/4 of a turn at a time. And really, if you were doing these by spanner, you're going to despair. So don't consider getting these bloody A-frame arms off. Unless you've got a cutting torch, and just cut the nut off. And you can see these things, I imagine these have been in since the factory. So the last person to touch these was probably Land Rover. And of course they put them in bone dry. Right, so one levelling strut. Now, the way this thing's designed to work, that end bolts onto the chassis, this end bolts onto the axle. The lower the back end of the car goes, the more this thing pushes down and levels the car up. So it's a self-levelling strut. This thing normally is, I think it's hydrogen filled. Might be nitrogen filled. Anyway, whatever it is, you shouldn't be able to push the damper in and out like you can't see. You shouldn't be able to push the damper in and out like that. It should be all you can do to even think about moving that. Okay, that's the first thing. First check. The next check, because this thing needs to articulate, there's a ball joint in here, and there's a ball joint here on the arm, and then the last ball joint here goes onto the top of the axle. So you can see it, that goes onto the axle. Now, none of these ball joints should have any play in them. The obvious problem with the one that goes onto the axle is the gator's disintegrated. Also, there's a wedge of play in it. So we need to replace that fella. That's a good old pressy job. Secondly, there's a ball joint at the end of the piston here. I think that's got some play in it. And lastly, there's a third ball joint on the top up here that goes onto the chassis mount. I think it's reasonable to say that that thing is entirely fucked. What I'm going to do though is I'll salvage the top and bottom joints. I'll salvage the gator because it appears to be relatively intact. The rest of this thing is going to be scrapped. There used to be a company that refilled them. Don't you piss around with these things. They're highly charged, they're dangerous. You really don't want to be pissing around with it. All I'm going to do is take the joints off top and bottom. So this fella, let's start by getting the top one off, because that's the easier one normally. I'm going to have to get myself organised with some tools here, because what I really need to do is I need to get this Jubilee clip off, which is might play, it might not, I don't know. I doubt it's going to play somehow. I sometimes have to just cut these fuckers off. If you're going to cut them off, slice them through, don't slice them through here, kind of thing. Then what it allows you to do is you can break off the clip without damaging the rubber. I think all the wrestling with bolts, my gloves full of blood. I'm going to go sort that out later on. I've been wearing gloves all day long. I've been careful. It doesn't hurt today. I can feel it. It's only I say Jubilee clip, it might not be a Jubilee clip, but that's not far away. There it goes. That's all it really needed. We bend that back, and there we go, it's now free. Alright, and that was all rusty as fuck in there, so the chances of that clip coming undone, I would have thought would be somewhere in the region of 0. Now, this is the normal colour I expect these things to be. They're normally kind of this, I suppose, Ford engine blue. There is a gator at the top here, and I do want to retain it, because again, they're a little piece of unobtainium. So when you find a strut that works, and I've had these things fail an MOT on a torn gator before now, I suppose it is actually critical to the rear axle. You've got to have this thing in place on a Range Rover because they don't like it. Yeah, I didn't fancy the chances of that actually undoing. I can go in the scrap bin. Right, now, under here, if we peel this rubber back, underneath it, we should see the top of the ball joint. There it is. I need to get a spanner in there
So there's flats. Quite involved this thing. Basically, you've got a pair of flats on the blue section, and you've got a pair of flats on the ball joint, which is the black section, just the thinner black section. So I need to go and get a pair of spanners. And then you need to position the spanner on the other half, and then, almost miraculously, this thing is unwinding. Now, this is most unusual. This is part of the joy of working on a car from Spain, because normally these things are fiendishly tight. I've had heat on these and all sorts of crap. Right, this is... I don't know when it became fucked, but it's certainly fucked now. Right, okay, so we've got the top mounting off. There's the top mount. Now I need to get this clip off next. Let's put the rest of this on. Take my hat off. There we are. Right, so there's the ball joint off. Sorry, there's the gaiter off, which I'm going to hang on to, and there's the stupid little clip I was just trying to get off. So I've bung that in the parts washer. It actually looks very serviceable. I'll hang on to that. What I'm going to do here, I think, is I'm going to be a bit brutal to my prehistoric spanner, and I'm going to bang the spanner so it's properly on the joint. Right, that's righty. Then I'm going to get the other spanner. There we are. Undis. Look at that. Worked. That's how you get the ball joints apart. Fuck you! If you saw the end of this, you'd understand why I'm doing that. Oh dear, oh dear. You've got to keep working, haven't you? You can't just fucking give up. And then I'm just going to wind this thing off without damaging the tip of my fucked up finger anymore. And when this strut comes off, which is almost off now, we can assess the state of the other. So there's the spanner comes off nicely. There's the other ball joint. Seen better days, isn't it? Whoops, sorry. There's the gaiter. There's the remains of the fluid that was in the damper at some point. And yeah, I don't think that's much. It's got some spring to it, so there's something left in there still. I've had these before now where they just go in like a... So it's got some effort, but that, you shouldn't be able to compress that at all. That's a dead boge self-leveling strut. Right, now let us see if we can get these ball joints out. So there's a couple of things I need to do on this. We need to get this fella out, because that is ruined. What I do here is I normally just undo the two bolts, take an angle grinder along the edges so I create a flat. Right, that's done that. Clear space there. Doing up. Pumping my pump face. It's getting rough and central. I'm going to brutalise it anyway, but my hands are out of the way. That was 5 tons. Now it's going to go. It's pushing out a steady 1 ton. And that was that. So there. Bit of cleaning up. There's a fair amount of sand in there. I'll give it a bit of a clean up. Right. Ooh, got myself hooked up on there. Okay, let's get this thing out now. So my top tip for getting these things out is don't worry about the hex faces. Work on this ring here, the ring for the dust cover, because you're never going to get a good purchase on that hex face. And also, if it doesn't shift easily, what you may end up doing is to run the angle grinder around that edge there with a view to seeing if you can release the grip. So we've got that in there. We'll start with Mr. Stilson. I've only got my 14-inch Stilson here. That ain't going to work already. It's already a fail. Let's lift him up and go up here. Right, so then we'll put that on there. Now these things are fucking tight. I will say now, and sometimes I have to get a bit brutal with getting these fuckers out. Right, big out. Whoops, sorry. Oh, the other thing I do, I haven't done it yet, is I do a little confidence dot so I can tell when it's moved. But once it starts moving, that's good news. Right, let's get a bit of torque on this fucker. Now I'm not going to put my full weight on this, but it's not going to be far short of it. I do believe that just turned. That's why you don't want to go too medieval on this thing. Now, we're lucky with this one. I've never had one come apart like this because I'm used to dealing with UK cars and they seize up something rotten. It's shifted that far. There we are, it's starting to turn now. And once it starts, there's no stopping it. Probably wind that out of my hand now. No, not quite. But you can see why I didn't bother with messing around with the hex edge, and I just destroyed the ring that the seal goes onto. So that's it. That's the ball joint. Now, the way these things work, you've got a big nylon cup, you've got the ball, and then it's supposed to be full of grease. And you can see why that's floundered. It's just utterly worn out. For the scrap bin. However, the rest of this arm is usable. Nothing wrong with that. I'll give it a clean up. Put a new ball joint in that end, put a new ball joint at that end, and reassemble it onto the axle with the A-frame. That's a result, isn't there? Should we try and see if we can get the other end apart as well? Should we tempt fate? Let's tempt fate. So I just want to pop this in here securely. So here we can see the hex face on it. I might need just to that pole I was using. What's that? 3 foot? 4 foot? So let's get Mr. Elora 14-inch on it. Make sure the workpiece is secure and make sure that there's somewhere for me to go flying to in the event of it suddenly going. There we are, that turned. So that was with 3 foot and me leaning on it, and it turns. At 1 foot, There you are, just about turns. There we go. That's that one off as well. That's all ready to refurb. This one's still got the grease in it. It's got, well, I say it's got grease in it. Yeah. Not really, is it? But it's shagged. Rubbish. So this lot can get cleaned up into the parts cleaner. Right, well, let's work out what we're going to do next. I'm going to have some fun doing other odds and sods. So that's done, dismantled the self-leveling strut and its 3 ball joints. That was fun, wasn't it, eh? The bits I'm going to keep, the rest of it's crap. Right, let's have a play around with the differential now. So what I'm going to do, I've taken obviously the diffs come out of the axle, that's what you're looking at here. And it's all, feels quite nice, but there's a way that you can reliably check using something like an engineer's blue. You've heard of blueprinting and all that sort of stuff. Well, this is what I'm really doing. So I get myself a little brush, and I don't want a huge amount of it. I put the red dot on there, by the way. Can you see the red dot? I put the red dot on there because that's where I degreased the crown wheel, and also so when I go around I can see where I put the blue dye. So the idea is you want to coat a couple of teeth in the blue dye, and then what you're doing then is you're looking at the mesh pattern. Right, that's pretty good. That's quite evenly spread on there. Is it on both sides? Yes. Right, so then it's just a simple case of rotating around a couple of times. And what we're really looking for then, apart from me putting my finger right in the middle of it, is the mesh pattern. And it's fucking perfect. Right, so it's going to be quite difficult to show you on this. If you can work that out, well done. Let me get the manual. The manual is very, I might even, I don't know if I've got the differential mesh pattern in here. But basically what you're looking for is on the inside of the tooth, you want a nice clean patch about halfway between the top of the tooth and the bottom of the tooth, and halfway between the inside edge and the outside edge, and it should be a nice oval kind of shape. And that means then it's got a really good mesh with the pinion. And that there is absolutely bang on. Cleaned up all the threads and the area where this ball joint needs to be pressed in. It is quite a tight fit, so I'm going to use the press to put this in. They take quite a lot of effort. Yeah, that'll work. Right, so start by working with this, and let's just generously lube up the inside of this joint here, just using copperies. Nice big old chunk of it. It'll allow it to slip in dead easily. Sorry you can't see my face, but that's no bad thing, that. When you've got enough copperies on there, then it's a case of, let me adjust this camera down so you can see what the heck is going on. So what I'm now doing is really just making sure that I can put this thing in the right orientation so that the bolt holes stand a fighting chance of lining up. I could actually get it to locate just by winding these 2 bolts down, couldn't I? All I really want to do is just get a very, very generous kind of, it's in the right rough sort of place before I start giving it the old heave-ho. And the critical thing obviously is making sure that grease seal remains intact. Right, so we're just going to go either side. Just tighten up half a turn at a time. Is it pulling it down. It is putting it down. Is it putting it down straight? That's probably about as far as I'm going to do that. It has gone onto the splines though, which is good news. Whether it's completely flat or not, I don't know yet. Let's undo these bolts now and see if it stays there. If it stays there, then we can move on to phase 2 of this press. Because obviously I can't have the bolts in there because I'll be pressing against the bolts. And that'll just be futile. Silly sod. Yes, I'd say it's going to stay in there. Right, now, next thing, let's pop that on there. I want to make sure that it is nice and clear of everything. And then I'm going to position a nice big chunky plate over the top there. No, that's no good. You can't fucking see what's going on because I moved the bloody camera. There we are. Right, okay, let's go through my box of schlock. Is that one too small? That one is too small. Let's get the next size up. It will probably do it. We'll see. Can't imagine what the worst that's possibly going to happen is. Well, if I fuck the joint up, then, you know, I fuck the joint up. But I'm trying to be a bit careful. What is going to happen here is it's going to bottom out. So let me just move this over to the edge. Because I need to give myself a bit more room so that it can move it down. And if I have to use the cup on the other side, I have to use the cup on the other side. Well, I thought I'd try it this way round first of all. That'll do. My hand's only there really just to line things up until the press is engaged. Right, now, hands are out. And start pressing. Right, so we are pushing down. It's going down. We're putting about a steady 2 and a bit tons. I'll have to tilt that up a bit, you can see the gauge. The gauge is running at about 2.5 tons at the moment. And it is going down. Check that I'm clear at the front. I am. What I'm checking here is that this piece down here isn't going to clash with the front of the frame. Right, I'm up to 3 tons now, which is predictable because it's going to be tougher to push in the more of the unit goes in. 3.5. We're almost there. 3.5. Now we're up to 5. I think it is pretty much there now. 6. Still dropping slightly. So it's going down. I pumped up to 7 tons and it's going down to 6. 5 and a bit. Check down to 5. It's not going any further. It's just right, it's no longer dropping, so I think that has now seated. That's gone in as far as it's going to go. I'm not going to give it any more than 6 tons. I don't fucking need it. Right, and then this comes out. In. Innie McIn face. How about that? Nice, eh? Right. And then all I need to do then is wiggle the camera around. Put these bolts back in. These just, I don't know what these bolts even do, to be honest. I don't think they do absolutely anything. I think on the really, really early boge self-leveling struts, they were really good at locating a separate dust cover. So when the dust cover broke, you could pop it out under these 2 bolts. A separate sheet would come off with the dust cover attached to it. and then you could just slide a new one on. But the new make of these ball joints kind of comes with an integral dust cap. Now, while we're talking about makes of ball joints, when you're doing shit like this, buy the best you can afford. Honestly, you don't want to be doing this job every 15 minutes. These guys I generally find to be really reliable as far as products are concerned. The easiest way of doing this is to mount the whole thing in a vise. We'll cut out the profanity. Right, I just want to clean up that joint in there. Get rid of all the unnecessary crap. And then the ball joint comes pretty much as the old one came out. A little dust cap on it. All full of grease and gloop and shit, which goes in the ball joint itself. You got the plastic cup in the bottom, full of grease and gloop and crap. And then the actual ball joint itself, all full of grease and gloop and cap. Nice, eh? That's all you need. And you push that in there. That can go into the bottom. What I'll do is I will just put a bit of grease and lube and crap. This is a really sticky grease, this one. These things come supplied with. I'm just going to put a bit of grease in the bottom there, and then that can go right down to the bottom of its housing. Then we've got the threaded part. Now, what I'm going to do here is, again, we're going to use liberal amounts of copperies, because it's going to make life easier when it comes to taking this thing apart again. And it will need to come apart at some point in the distant future, but not very soon. It just makes the next person's job a little bit easier. The other thing I do with these when I put them together is I put loads of gloop on the mating face, because again it kind of prevents a little bit of rust. There we are. And then the cup then literally comes down and screws over the top, and it is as easy as that. And it gets down to being relatively close. I don't thread lock these in. Some people go through and they thread lock them in and they do all sorts of stupid things. I don't see the point of thread locking these things in, because they ain't going to fucking shift. You saw how much effort was required to actually get the damn thing out in the first place. Now, nice old ball joint there and no movement. Let's put that back over the top to protect it, and I'm going to go and get my big spanner. This big spanner will fit it. It might be too... No, it's too big. Right, we'll use... we had a good degree of success with this the other day, didn't we? So we're going to use this again. And it's just a case, really, of lining it all up. And I'm not going to go medieval at it, but I do want it to be kind of just nipped in, which is more or less all I'm doing here. Yeah, that's it. Done. Dunny McDun face. Yeah, new stub axles on both ends. Looking good, eh? Differential's back in. Just to sort out the differential drive flange. The old O-ring was a pain in the ass to get out. In the end, I had to punch it in and then lift it out. As soon as I punched it in, it released the grip on the outsides. No real damage done to the excuse me, no real damage done to the differential. But that was a git to get out. Now, then I looked at the new drive flange and I thought, oh, they're different. Fuck it. Then I found a little spacer that was inside the nose, sitting on top of the bearing, so that's out now. And then the same height. And then I looked at and they're different. But I think it's going to be okay. I'm going to tap this in just so that this is on the end. That, so the hub nut spanner, is exactly the right size to bang the dust seal on. MLA, straight on, no issues. Right, so that's on. I guess they don't fit it because in certain applications it probably needs to be the other way around, but in this one, right, it's got that bastard in. Now I've lubed up this, lubed up the edges of it, so it's not going to heat the seal up too much. Goes in. I put that fucking thing on the wrong way up though. Where's the old one? Well, I don't know. I tried it the other way up, and it didn't fit. It fit even worse. It was like sitting 5 miles per hour. So then I used the original one. So I've knocked the original one off the original flange, and that goes on, does exactly what it should do. You just want a little gap. Just stops the worst of the crap flying in there. Right, get that torqued up now. Oh yes. You go, wanged it up to 85 foot-pounds. The only way you can do it is 2 hands, obviously. Brace the flange using a couple of prop shaft bolts, and then just work this up. It's hard work. I mean, 85 foot-pounds is it needs a bit of strength. There you go. And I was using my dodgy hand as well. Look at that. Right, so that's done that. I think tomorrow now, bolt kit is going to arrive, and we can get these bits sorted out. Then it can go back in the car. Woo-hoo!